deck tech is one of the first decks I started playing with. So it's just a casual deck, but it is a ton of fun to play, and it's all based on human creatures, which is it's a lot of fun to play with. So this is my red-white human deck. For our mana base, we have 8 plains and 8 mountains, and we also have 4 copies of Clifftop Retreat. Now, this land comes into play tapped unless you already control a mountain or plain, so it's a great turn 2 land to supplement whatever you're going to be putting out for turn 1, and it taps to produce red or white mana, which is awesome because this deck definitely needs it. I probably need to add a few more mana sources in here, just because it can get a little top heavy land-wise. This deck, it's not the most well-oiled machine, but like I said, it's a lot of fun to play with. Alright, so for my creatures, I have 4 copies of Champion of the Parish. Now this is a 1 mana drop, 1 white mana for a 1/1 creature, but he also has the awesome ability that whenever another human comes into play that you control, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on it. And since all these creatures I have in here are humans, you're going to be triggering that anytime you put down a new creature, which is good because then you'll just be growing your guy a lot bigger, and it's a really awesome thing to do. I also have 2 copies of Kruin Striker. Now this is a 2 mana for a 2/1, and whenever another creature comes into the battlefield, he gets +1/+0, and he gains trample, which is great because if your opponent's gonna have to be blocking stuff, and if you're putting a lot of stuff, it's gonna be really big, and it'll be able to just trample straight over. And he's a human, so he's gonna be triggering that Champion of the Parish, which is great. I also have 4 copies of Thraben Valiant. It's 2 mana, 1 colorless and a white for a 2/1, but it also has Vigilance, and Vigilance is pretty sweet in this deck. It's nice to be able to block stuff, and it's really good like that. I also include 4 copies of Riot Ringleader. It's a 3 mana, 2 colorless and a red for a 2/2, but when it attacks, it gives all of your other human creatures you control +1/+0 until end of turn. So if you attack with it and a couple others, it's automatically going to be a 3/2, which is awesome because it gives itself +1/+0 too. So you're paying 3 for a 3/2, and you get to pump everyone else is really good. So there's 4 copies of that. I also include 4 copies of Kessig Malcontents. 3 mana, 2 colorless and a red for a 3/1, and when it enters the battlefield, you deal your opponent damage equal to the number of humans you have in control. So, like I said, this deck, everything's human, so you're going to be triggering that a lot. So 4 copies of those. I also include 4 copies of this awesome 3 mana creature. 1 colorless, a plains, and a red mountain, and it ends up with, you get a flying haste 2/2, which is sweet because you can kind of surprise him, trigger everything because it's a human, and swing in with a flying creature unprotected. It's awesome. I also have 2 copies of Goldnight Commander. Now this is 4 mana, 3 colorless and a white for a 2/2, but whenever another creature enters the battlefield, it gives all your creatures +1/+1 until the end of turn. So if you're going to be able to play a lot of stuff on a turn, it's really good to have them out there. Alright, so for my final top creature, I have 2 copies of Zealous Conscripts. Now it's 5 mana for a 3/3 with haste, but you also have the ability where you get to take control of the opponent's permanent, it gains haste, it untaps, and you can really end games with this card. It's awesome. It's a lot of fun to be like, oh, that big fatty you just played, it's mine now for this turn, and I'm going to kill you with it. Yay! So, that's all the creatures in the deck. I've also got a couple spells. First off, 2 copies of Incinerate, basic 2 mana, deal 3 damage to creature or player spell, and the creature can't be regenerated this turn, so that's kind of nice to have that added caveat on it. I also include 4 copies of what I think is my favorite card ever, Thatcher Revolt. 3 mana for a sorcery to put 3 1/1 human creatures in play. Normally that's whatever, but in combination with the rest of this deck, and you're going to be triggering the Champion of Parish 3 times, it is pretty sweet. I really like this card in this deck. It's a lot of fun to play with. I also have 2 copies of Vigilante Justice, 4 mana for an enchantment that whenever a human enters the battlefield under your control, your opponent loses 1 life. So that's pretty awesome. You're going to be having a lot of humans entering battle control. You're going to be using Thatcher Revolts with this. It's pretty cool. I also have 2 copies of Commander's Authority. Now this is 5 mana for an enchantment Aurora, so you enchant a creature with it, but what it does is on your upkeep you get to put a 1/1 human soldier token or human creature token onto the battlefield, which is fantastic because it's going to be triggering all that stuff you need it to, which is great. I really like that in combination with everything else. This deck is about comboing off with the humans. It's really cool. So for my last 4 cards in this deck, I have 4 copies of Cathars Crusade. It's another 5 mana spell, but it's also an enchantment, and what it does is whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on all your creatures. So you're going to be doing this a lot, especially if you get it out with the Commander's Authority, or if you're using Thatcher Revolts with it, your creatures are going to get pumped up big really fast. It's really awesome. So like I said, I really like playing this deck. It's not the greatest thing, and I needs a little few tweaks and stuff like that, but it's a lot of fun to play with just casually on your kitchen magic things. What I really wish was the new Elspeth would, if she had just produced human soldier tokens instead of soldier tokens, it would have been awesome, and she would have been perfect in this deck, and it would have been so sweet to put her in here. But alas, I can't have everything, so she's not in this deck because they're just soldiers and not human soldiers, even though you think they should be humans, but they're not, so she's not in here, which makes me kind of sad. But let me know what you think of this deck in the comments below, like this video, and subscribe for more.